Karuba. Karuba is a simple, light family game with a jungle exploration, Indiana Jonesy type of theme. The players control explorers that are traveling in the jungle looking for paths that will lead them to temples where they can loot treasure. But what is interesting is that we do not have each player controlling an explorer, but each player controlling a group of explorers. Actually, each player has their own board, their own temples, and their own group of 4 explorers. So it's a game that proceeds in parallel, everybody working on their own board, and that also means very little interaction, virtually no interaction, but for a very small modicum of indirect interaction, as you will see after I give you a general sense of how the game works. Each player in the game receives a board such as this one, 4 wooden explorers, a set of 4 temples, and a set of terrain tiles. All of these components are exactly the same for all players. First, players need to set up the explorers. The explorers will need to be set up anywhere along these 2 edges, and they need to be set up in exactly the same way on all boards. So if you see that this is my board, everybody else will have a board that will look exactly the same. And players can do that in any way that they decide, that they agree on. Maybe a player will place one, and next player will place the next. So they take turn. This game, I set it up. Next turn, you set it up. You roll dice, do it randomly. Doesn't matter, as long as every player has a board with the 4 explorers set up in the same way, and the 4 temples set up anywhere along these 2 green lines deep in the jungle. For example, this could be an interesting placement. And again, if you say that this is going on my board, you know that the same configuration is on all other boards. Tiles. One of the players will put all their tiles together and shuffle them in a face-down stack. Everybody else will actually place their tiles face up, and in order. The tiles have numbers between 1 and 36, they are numbered, so you need to place them in the correct numerical order, simply because that will facilitate gameplay, because during gameplay, players will need to retrieve their tiles. So everybody but one will have their tiles face up and in order, and one player will have them all mixed up, face down. How does the game work? The player with the face down tiles, so the shuffle tiles, will draw one, will announce the number, and then everybody else gets the same tile. This is why you need them in order. 15, everybody gets their 15 tile, bingo style. And then players make a decision of what to do with that tile, and everybody takes their turn at the same time. With a tile, you can place the tile on the board. It can be anywhere, doesn't need to be adjacent to anything specifically. It can be in the middle of the jungle if you so wish. The only rule really is that you cannot place tiles one on top of the other, and there is a rule about orientation. The number always needs to be in the top left corner, so everybody needs to use the same orientation. Some terrain tiles have a crystal symbol on them, then you place a crystal on it. Every player does that on their tile, wherever they placed it. Some other tiles have a gold symbol on them, and then you simply place a piece of gold. There is, of course, a supply of these components that comes with the game. So this is one of the things that you will do. Turn after turn, you will create a system of paths leading or attempting to lead your explorers to the temples. Each explorer is trying to go to the temple of the corresponding color. So if their future paths are crossing, you need to make sure that as you place a tile, you don't block off some of your adventurers. Maybe actually you realize that you won't be able to lead all your adventurers to the temple of their color. Then you simply try to maximize your conquest in some other ways. So this is one of the things that you can do. Again, you get a tile, you can choose to place it on the board, and that's it. Or you can choose to discard it. When you discard a tile, you get to move one of your explorers. So the tile generates movement points. The number is equal to the number of edges on the tile that is crossed by paths. It has paths going out of. So this tile is worth 2, let's call them movement points. This one 3, and this one 4. These are the available number of movement points. When you discard a tile for its movement value, then you get to move one of your explorers by that number of spaces, up to that number of spaces, moving, of course, along paths. If you move in a space that has a piece of gold or a crystal that was deposited there earlier, you simply take it and you put it in your supply of the good stuff that you found. When an explorer reaches a treasure, you get to collect the treasure, well, from the temple. First you need to reach the temple, and that's how you get the treasure. So look at that. Purple was able to get to that treasure, also collects a gold. When you get to a temple, well, each temple has a set of treasures associated with it for tokens. Not all are used in all games. With fewer players, there are fewer of these tokens available. When your explorer reaches a temple, you take the available treasure token from the temple. Of course, you get the one with the highest number because that is also the highest number of victory points. This one is worth 5 victory points, 4, 3, and 2 at the end of the game. The game continues like this, drawing tiles and placing them or discarding them for movement until one or two things happens. One thing is that you run out of tiles, and that ends the game right there. The other end of game condition is if there is a player whose explorers all have reached the temple of the correct color. So this guy's here, this guy's here, and this guy's here. Because once the explorers reach the corresponding temple and grab one of the available treasures, the explorer is out of the game. There is nothing that the explorer can do. If a player completes their set, that is, grabs a treasure from each temple, that also marks the end of the game. To determine the winner, you count victory points that are generated by the treasures that you collected from the temples. Also, each piece of gold that you collected during the game is worth 2 victory points, each crystal 1 victory point. And the player with the highest total, of course, is the winner of the game. So very little interaction. Pretty much the only interaction that you have is when you see that another player is going to grab a certain treasure from a certain temple. Maybe you'll try to rush to the temple before they do so that you grab the bigger treasure. And if you grab it, I don't have it. That idea of depleting the resources of certain temples before the other players do is the only element of interaction that you have here. But it's really not all that big, because after all, if you started building your net of paths in a certain way and your explorers are in a certain situation, you can't change radically from one turn to the other. You can't recover. And frankly, if you spend too much time just looking at what other players are doing, then you're not devoting enough attention to your own puzzle, to the puzzle that you're trying to create on your own board. The game definitely has a bit of a puzzle element, but not one that feels too complicated, precisely because it doesn't feel like you need to look for the one true way to victory. There are so many ways that you can achieve victory. There's flexibility in the fact that you can choose to use the tiles anywhere on the board, or to burn them for movement points. So there's a lot of flexibility, there are a lot of options, but not to the point that the options feel overwhelming because the objectives are still so clear. You have a sense of a lot of options and a lot of possible ways, so you don't feel like pressured, oh my gosh, in a single piece not placed where it should be is gonna ruin my entire strategy. Unless you make a truly obvious mistake, but that is, say, by placing a tile that has no path right in front of one of your explorers. But even my daughter, who is 5, does not make that type of glaring mistake. So you have the sense that you're immersed in the experience, in creating this puzzle, but you're taking it lightly. You're just trying to maximize your performance, to optimize your puzzle, but if you go there one way or the other, it's still fine. And you again get the sense that you do not need to overthink things too much, because there's random elements you cannot see ahead. You do not know exactly what kind of piece is going to come up next. What you do see, however, even if you're the player with the tiles face down, is the set of tiles that the players still have. So players do get a sense of what's available, and at a certain point they realize, going for that certain strategy really was not pay off because there are very few tiles of the type that I need that are still available. So you do not know what you're gonna have next, what you're gonna receive next specifically. You do get a perfect sense about the pool of tiles that are still available. To me, that creates a nice balance between your ability to make plans for the future and to try to create optimal situations on the board, while at the same time preventing analysis paralysis, preventing the opponents from everybody, your opponents and you yourself, from trying to optimize things too much. It doesn't get too cerebral. It remains light. It really, to me, really hits a soft spot there. But, there is enough. There are enough decisions to make. There are enough fun things that you can do to keep you involved, but not so many, or not decisions that revolve around too much of a burden of responsibility to make the game heavy, or anything different from a very light puzzle game. It's a puzzle, but it is light. It is rewarding without feeling, again, that you have to work too much to make it work. So it's a puzzle game that's very light, but with a personality, with a very distinct personality, with a distinct flavor. And it is a true family game. Oh, so many family games. So many games these days are marketed as family games, and what that means is the parents will be bored to death and sit through the game as the kids have fun. True family games are games like this one that you can play it with your kids, like I did. I played with my 3-year-old and with my 5-year-old. The 3-year-old, after a while, got bored, and she was actually drawing the tiles, recognizing some of the numbers, and she was having fun that way. But playing it with a 5 or a 6-year-old is absolutely possible. And if you play in that fashion, then it shows its nature as a true family game. Because my daughter, my 6-year-old, almost 6-year-old, was really good at it. She won a couple of games. Just honestly, I wasn't even trying to help her. Kids have a chance. Kids with the strange way their brain is wired may see things that adults may overlook. Kids are involved, and you play the game, you still feel engaged. And something also that makes it a good family game is the almost non-existent level of direct interaction, direct competition. You do not win by throwing your wife under the bus and stabbing your kids in the back, which of course then creates all sorts of problems in the ecology, the emotional ecology of the family. You win by solving the puzzle before your significant other, or before your kids do, or they do it. So there are no bad feelings. There is no bitter taste at the end, which really makes it for a great family game, for a great play with your spouse game. Being so simple, being so linear, it is a game that you can play with casual board gamers, with non-board gamers even. If it wasn't for the size, this would be a perfect camping game. I like to, with my family, we go camping a lot, and I always bring games that I can potentially play with friends of ours that are coming also and do not play games ever unless they're camping with me, and with their kids. So games that anybody and everybody could play. This could be one such game. It's not very portable, but it's not a huge heavy brick either. So it could work for that setting. But in any case, it has that spirit of a game that you can pull out of the shelf at any time with anybody, teach it in a couple of minutes, and people will immediately be drawn in and will immediately enjoy it. Just so many good things that I can say about this game. One thing is setup can be a little annoying because you do have to put all those tiles in the correct order, but one player doesn't have to do it, because one player just shuffles things together so the player can help the other players. in the end, actually, that's something that concerned me, but even setup didn't turn out to be too much of a pain. And then every time that we play the game, we have so much fun that we completely forget about that. We're so excited about playing the next game that we don't worry at all about setting up the game. Again, of course, when I set up a war game, it takes me much longer. But usually, when you have a light game, you want also quick setup. This is a light game that has a little more setup than usual than other fillers. But it's not a big deal because then you get so much out of gameplay that you really don't mind. I called it a filler. In a sense, it is. Let's call it an extended filler. It's not a big experience, but it's not a 10-15 minutes game either. But what it is a really fun game. Karuba. I'm absolutely happy that I picked up this game. I had fun every time that I played it. It's a game that I can play with adults. I can play with my daughters, the oldest one for now, the other one pretty soon, I'm sure. It's a fun game. I just enjoyed every minute of playing this game. I can only recommend it to, well, pretty much anybody, because even the heavy war gamers from time to time may need a break. Even they may have somebody who is visiting, even they may go camping, and at that point maybe you can't play your favorite scenario of the Advanced Squad Leader. Try Karuba. It's not quite the same thing, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun.